Okay, welcome to our Alumni Spotlight today. I'm your host from Flatiron School, Lindsay Williams, and joining me today is 2020 grad Phyllis Njoroge, here to talk about her journey to Flatiron School and what she's up to now. Phyllis, thanks for letting us chat with you today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Before we dive in, would love to hear just quickly, what program did you graduate from and what are you up to now?
I graduated from the full stack web engineering program, and after that, I became a product manager for 3 years, and then I left my job in September, and since then have been on sabbatical, enjoying life.
Nice. I love that. Well, I want to hear more about that. We're going to dive into it soon. Let's go back in time. Let's go into the way back machine. What were you doing before you enrolled in Flatiron School?
I was in hairdressing school in Kenya.
Oh,
So
wow.
after I graduated from college and I got a product design full-time offer that was my dream offer. I honestly didn't think I was ready to start working all the time. And so I, you know, thought forward to if I was like 85 or whatever the life expectancy is nowadays, how would I feel about my life? And I realized that I wanted to spend more time with my family. So I turned down the offer, went to Kenya, which is where my family is, and on a one-way ticket that I bought 3 weeks out. And yeah, just decided to go there. And while I was there, I read Shonda Rhimes' book, Year of Yes, which is about saying yes to everything, spoiler alert. And one of the ideas I had while I was in Kenya was to try out going to hairdressing school because that's something that I was interested in. And so I enrolled in hairdressing school. And while I was in hairdressing school, I got curious about getting back into tech. So I started teaching myself how to code. And from there, applied to Flatiron and got into the program and moved back to the United States to attend Flatiron. And then everything shut down and the program was virtual because the pandemic started.
Yes, the year of 2020. Well, tell me, let's back up a second. So what piqued your interest in hairstyling? And then, same question for tech. So those two things seem different on sort of the surface. What drew you into each of those?
Well, I have hair that I need to do, so I wanted to learn how to do it myself.
Uh-huh.
I was very interested in trying to, save money on getting it done by other people by doing it myself, but also doing other people's hair and making money for myself. And then for tech, I was a cognitive and brain sciences major in college, which included a lot of computer science classes. So I already had some background there. But I was interested in furthering that background because, as I mentioned, I graduated with a product design offer. So my path was in tech anyway. I just happened to go to hairdressing school in the middle.
I love that. I would love to do that myself. Um, well, so Flatiron came about. How did you discover Flatiron School? What made you decide to enroll in Flatiron specifically?
Yeah, I actually found out about Flatiron because I was applying to jobs, and one of the companies that I was applying to posted about Flatiron's program, and I was like, oh, I mean, this sounds interesting. So I wasn't explicitly looking for coding boot camps. I found out about the coding boot camp because I was looking for a job. And so after I found out about Flatiron, it seemed like a really good program, and I decided to apply for the next cohort, and I got in and graduated a few months later.
Nice, nice. So tell us what was Flatiron like for you? What was your experience?
Well, it was definitely an unexpected experience because I thought I was gonna, come to class every day, and then class ended up being my bedroom, which was a wild ride. But yeah, it was very interesting because, a lot of people simultaneously were learning how to do things virtually. And it was interesting to do this specific program virtually because it's about technology and software in the first place. So that really made me focus on what I was doing. And because all I could do was be in the house working on my homework in the first place. So I think that that was really helpful. Luckily, I was in a cohort that was very well connected. We spent a lot of time with each other over Zoom calls, which made it feel less isolated of an experience. And we also kept in touch after the program. had finished. So all of that came together pretty well. And I'm really grateful that I had pretty good instructors and great classmates, because I think without that, just coding all day and not being able to go outside because the world is dying would have been a difficult combination.
Sounds like you made the most of it.
Exactly.
Did you have like a favorite part of the program, or?
Honestly, my favorite part of the program was finally meeting people in person. Like as things started after we graduated, as things started to get a little better, we finally decided to meet up. I obviously didn't get to meet everyone because at that point the program was over. So trying to get in contact with everyone was its own thing. Trying to coordinate schedules is also its own thing. But getting to see people in person was a fun time, especially because we all tried to predict each other's heights in advance and then
Oh
got
yeah.
to see who was right once we actually met.
That's a fun activity. I know of some folks who like use it as a meeting icebreaker, is to have like a virtual whiteboard and you try to do that and then you actually reveal all the answers, and it can be very surprising for folks. Okay, so favorite part sounds like community. Did you have least favorite part? What was the hardest thing?
The hardest thing was I didn't have internet when the program started. So
Oh boy.
yeah, so it's kind of hard to do a virtual program without being able to connect to the virtual aspects of the program. So that was extremely difficult because, like I said, I moved from Kenya to Houston for the program specifically. So I was staying in an Airbnb. My Airbnb had crap Wi-Fi, and libraries were closed because everything was closed. Co-working spaces were closed because everything was closed.
Oh wow.
Cafes were closed because everything was closed.
Wow.
So any place that you normally go to get internet when your internet is out is now closed because there is a global pandemic happening. So that was extremely difficult. I tried to upgrade my phone plan to hotspot my Wi-Fi, my laptop with Wi-Fi, but hotspots aren't prepared for you need the hotspot from sun up to sundown. They're only supposed to be a hotspot momentarily. So that didn't work out too well either. And then eventually the person who was running the program was able to negotiate with one of the co-working spaces to let me in, even though they're closed. So that
Wow.
worked out for a while. And then eventually I ended up finding a different place that had better Wi-Fi. So it worked, but the first few weeks were rough,
Yeah.
especially because I wasn't vetting Airbnbs by how strong their Wi-Fi signal was because I didn't think I was going to be in the Airbnb all day.
Oh, well, that would be quite an obstacle. I'm glad you got through it and, persevered. Was your program in undergraduate school, did you find that to be pretty advantageous for you coming through Flatiron?
Yeah, because colleges don't know how to teach intro to computer science classes. I think anyone who starts, or at least at the college that I went to for sure, anyone who starts by going to an intro to computer science class at a university is at a strong disadvantage because you're going to think you're stupider than you actually are because they're teaching to hundreds of students and they don't care what level of background you have come in with, and they expect you to figure everything out on your own, except with the very few office hours that teaching assistants have. So that was like not a setup for success, and it was incredibly stressful. And that's what I expected when I came to Flatiron. I was like, well, I already know how hard this is. And then I was like, oh, you're telling me this isn't as miserable when teachers actually give you direct attention to a reasonable cohort of students on a daily basis? Wow, who would have thought? So I would say it was advantageous in that I had to learn a lot of similar concepts in a much more hands-off way. And so when I was in the program, it was super helpful because I finally felt like I could understand it for once because I was able to have conversations and ask questions rather than being in a lecture hall.
Hmm. Well, that surprised me. I wasn't expecting that response. Yeah, but glad to hear that even in a virtual world, you were still able to receive, a lot of support. Um, so before we get to where you ended up, tell us a little bit about what your job search was like. I mean, I've already mentioned it's the pandemic. And if anybody can recall, that was just a wild roller coaster of like fear of will there be any jobs, to then sort of like a boom in maybe late 2020, early 2021. And then here we are today. So like, what was your experience like looking for a job?
Yeah, it was definitely interesting because no one's bringing you to their office to interview. So everything was virtual. And that also opened the opportunity to end up applying for jobs that aren't necessarily where you live. So I was looking at different opportunities in different places because I could, because now we can work on our computer instead of having to work physically in the same spot. And that's how I ended up getting a job in San Francisco, which, I worked as a product manager, and there's a lot more product managers in the Bay Area than in other places. So that gave me the advantage in that an opportunity that I normally wouldn't have now opened up because we just have to have internet connection to be at work, which was good.
Yeah. So I take it you didn't end up relocating, you stayed in Texas. Another story?
The relocating story is a very long and upsetting
Uh-oh.
story, so we're not going to get into
Okay.
it.
Pretend
But
like I didn't ask.
yeah, I did relocate, unfortunately, and then didn't actually need to do so. But it's a whole other thing.
Yeah, that doesn't sound pleasant.
Yeah.
All right, we won't go there. So you started as a product manager at Redfin, and you had this, sounds like, interest in product from when you were an undergrad. Tell us about your journey there. Did you always know you wanted to go right into product? Did you ever think you'd want to go right into like a software engineering role? Tell us about that.
Yeah, I just didn't know what a product manager was. I was always interested in products without knowing that the job existed. So that's why I graduated college getting into product design, because that was the role that I was introduced to that was related to products. And then I wanted to get more technical experience with the product and the software that I was working in. So I was like, cool, I'll become a software engineer. So I entirely enrolled in Flatiron with the whole intention of graduating to become a software engineer. And then while I was in the program, I was talking to people about how I enjoyed certain aspects about product design, and I was talking about how I enjoyed certain aspects of software engineering. And I was wondering if there's someone else, there's someone else who works with these products that isn't those two people, because I like aspects of this work, but I don't think I found exactly what I'm looking for yet. And so I literally just asked around until eventually someone told me what a product manager was. And then I looked into it and I was like, that's what I've been looking for. So once I found out about that, I joined a lot of product communities and got really engaged with other people who work in product, and continued to affirm that that's the role that I actually wanted to be doing. And then ended up graduating, focusing on getting a product job, and did that.
Oh, wow. Sounds like you were maybe networking along, like what I would call networking. Was that something that you found to be fairly like natural to you? Tell us a little bit about that, because we talk about that a lot in career coaching.
Yeah, I explicitly remember going to my career services office in college and being like, I don't understand what networking is. It's like a very confusing concept to me.
Mhm.
And I think it's because it's a word that gets thrown around very easily when it literally just means talking to people, right? Building relationships with people, and it sounds more ominous than it actually is. So yeah, in that respect, yes, I'm a naturally extroverted person, always have talked to a lot of people. So now I was like, okay, talk to a lot of people about their job was a different focus of talking to people, but not different from anything that I do in my day-to-day life.
Right. Yeah, it is just like a very ominous, that's a great word for it, term that just means building relationships, which is not also very easy if it doesn't come natural to you, but um, can certainly help you navigate your path along the way, which sounds like it helped with you.
Yeah,
So
I think on the note of networking, the reason why it feels like it doesn't come natural is because people try to force unnatural relationships for the purposes of networking, and that's just not gonna work. Like people are like, oh, I have to network with the CEO of this company. It's like, actually, you don't. If you don't like them, you don't like them. Maybe you should talk
yeah,
to a product manager at the same company, or a designer at the same company, or someone else. But it can feel uncomfortable because you're literally trying to force a relationship you're not interested in otherwise, other than the purpose of trying to get a job or trying to get something out of them. And that's why it becomes uncomfortable. But if you're just talking to people you want to talk to, it's not going to be as uncomfortable.
yeah, well said. So tell us about your time at Redfin. What was it like now that you've gotten the product manager role? You're in it. Tell us a little bit about that.
It was definitely an adventure. I had 7 managers in 3 years. So
Oh, wow.
that was very stressful. Some managers much better than others. So I'm very grateful to have had a lot of experience in a short amount of time. I also worked with like just as many designers, definitely multiple software engineers. I ended up being on 5 different teams. So it was very turbulent because the person who hired me left like a few months after hiring me. And he was like very invested in my career and coaching me and promoting me on a path in product management. And then he left and I was like, well, this is about to look very different than what I signed up for. So I ended up just like getting bounced around for the rest of my time there. And that's actually why I left, because I was like, this is not supporting my career growth. This is really just making me stressed.
Wow.
But it was very interesting because they, at the time, I doubt they're doing this anymore because a lot of companies have changed everything they do about hiring. But at the time, they invest in early career product managers like right at the get-go. So like in 2020, you'd see a lot of job, even now you'd see a lot of job descriptions that are like 25 plus years of experience. And it's like, okay, well, I'm not even 25 yet, so I can't give you that many years of experience.
Uh-huh.
Versus the job description for the role that I applied for, it said 2 years of experience. So I appreciated the fact that they were really trying to invest in like people who are early in their career and like build them up in working in a product environment. And that was something that I was very grateful for. And then I was also very grateful for the fact that Redfin, from the CEO down, because if it's not the CEO down, it's not going to work. But Redfin really values diversity. So I worked with a lot of women. I worked with a lot of people of color. Sometimes my entire team was women and people of color, which I really appreciated. So that really helped because it felt like I was learning a lot in a new role, but I didn't feel like people were judging me, and I felt like people were incredibly supportive. So that environment was very helpful to learn and grow in. And then also even the fact that I got bounced around a lot was helpful to learn and grow in, because I now know, for example, like what kind of managers I'm looking for, like what makes me a better collaborator with certain people versus others. If you've always worked with the same types of people, you don't know how to handle a variety of people versus I've worked with and for so many people at this point that I have a much better radar for what I'm looking for and also what I have to offer.
Hmm. Hmm. That's really cool. So let's hear a little bit about where you are today. I mean, hearing your story so far, I mean it seems like you are, like well positioned to talk about imposter syndrome just because, you've gone into this new field, not having been a product manager before. You have a lot of different interests. You've had 7 managers in 3 years. Trying to acquire like validation of your skills with 7 managers, that sounds really hard. But that's my observation. Tell us about the motivation for writing a book about imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, part of it is my experiences with imposter syndrome myself, both in my role and in school. So I was talking to someone who I met who was in college who had published a book, and I was like, I don't know how you publish a book while you're still in college. Like, that doesn't make sense. And she's like, I did it through this program. And I was like, cool. So I reached out to the program and they're like, let's do an initial call. And then the initial call, they're like, is there a topic that you think you could write about? And I was like, well, I already talk about imposter syndrome on LinkedIn extensively, and that seems to really resonate. So I think I would love to keep doing research on that and then develop that into a book. So that's how I ended up on that path. And then I ended up working with a really great editor who helped me get to the point of publishing it. And I'm really grateful for that process. One, because I learned a lot about imposter syndrome in the process that I needed to hear, and advice that I still use, and research and strategies that I still refer back to, but also just understanding that it's a universal problem that a lot of people are experiencing, and being able to share that with others, myself, based off of not only anecdote, but also research, was continues to be something that I'm like very grateful for, because people will reach out to me and tell me how helpful it's been and how much it's like changed their mindset around how they approach themselves and their career. And so like that kind of impact is priceless at that point. So I am really happy that like I went through the work. It was very tiring, very exhausting to write a book, but I went through the work of that process so that I and other people can continue to benefit from the strategies that are in From Fraud to Freedom.
Amazing. That's quite an accomplishment. So I would love to dive into more about those things, but I want to hog all the questions. We've got some coming in. So one from David, he asks that he shares he's currently deep in the void of a job search, and would love to hear about any moments where you felt you were stifled and made a strategic change, or maybe any approaches that led to a breakthrough. Like if you got an opportunity through a network connection, can you explain how that opportunity was relayed to you?
Yeah. One, if you feel you're stifled, to me, that sounds like there's someone you're dealing with or something you're dealing with that is making you feel stifled. And my advice is just stop dealing with them. I have had a lot of people in my life that were not giving me useful advice or were trying to impose their limitations onto me while I'm trying to ask for help. And I just like stopped talking to them. There was a person who is a very well-known career coach who I'd spoken to when I was trying to get a role in product. And she knew that I was in the Flatiron program. And she's like, honestly, you should probably just focus on software engineering. You're not going to get a product role. And I was like, it's literally your job to help me do that. This is not a career coach through Flatiron. This is someone that I had found on LinkedIn. And then I just like stopped talking to her and obviously became a product manager like 2 months later. So sometimes if you feel like other people's approach is not working for you, instead of listening to other people that are making you feel stifled, just stop dealing with them because they're going to continue to do that. Same thing with when I was writing my book, my first editor was not helpful. Like I would send her copies of my manuscript and she's like, this is great. And I was like, that's not going to help me write a better book. So I literally fired her and asked for a different editor. So I would say the first thing is whatever is making you feel stifled, if it's another person, getting rid of that other person so that you can go find people who can better empower you and give you the advice that you're looking for. So that's part one. And then if you got an opportunity through a network connection, can you explain how that opportunity was relayed to you? I was posting all the time. I still post all the time on LinkedIn. And so I was posting basically every day. I'm not advising you to post every day, but I just wanted to because I enjoy writing. That's why I became an author. I was posting every day on LinkedIn about things that I was learning in products, conversations I was having with product managers. And that continued to expose me to more and more people who were in product. Because if you don't show yourself to people, how are they ever going to find out who you are? And people can't give you an opportunity if they don't think of you in the first place when an opportunity arises. So I was posting about products a lot. And then one of the people that I met was telling me, I told him about the conversation I just had with this woman who was a software engineer trying to become a product manager, telling me because she couldn't become a product manager, I can't become a product manager and should just focus on being a software engineer. I was telling him about how frustrating that conversation was and how I'm not going to speak with her again. And he's like, you can be a product manager. And mind you, he was a product manager at Redfin. So I didn't reach out to him to get a job from him. I actually reached out because I was just venting about how frustrated I was with other people in my process. And then he's like, you can become a product manager. In fact, I believe that so much, I'm just going to introduce you to our recruiter. So he sent an email to the recruiter and then she let me know about a job that wasn't posted yet. And she's like, hey, we're going to open up a role in a couple of weeks for a PM. Sounds like something that you'd be interested in. Here it is. And that's how I ended up getting that opportunity. And that's what I mean about like networking not being a forced conversation between only the people who run things, because then you'll think that they're the only ones that can offer you an opportunity. It's really just, or at least for me, it's been having conversations with people I want to be talking to, and then the opportunities that arise from natural conversations with people I actually want to be speaking with. So that was a big part of my process. And then I did get other interviews at other companies. Similarly, a lot of those people found me because they saw me posting about product, and therefore they knew I was interested in product. And therefore, when they saw a product role, they reached out to me and thought that I should apply. I'm not sure if there are other parts of that question, but
Well,
it was my process.
I'm curious on a follow up on that. Was there like a certain outreach message that just really worked for you? Or was it, looking into their profile and saying like, oh, I really love this work you're doing here. I'd love to hear more about it. Like, how did you communicate over a cold message that you really wanted to talk to them, not because of like build a relationship with them as a person, if that makes sense?
Because I actually did.
So how did you communicate
Yeah,
that,
there's
right? Like
like
that.
the thing that's interesting about that is like there's no message that's gonna work because if you like you know this with your own friends, you don't send the same message to all of your friends when you want to talk to them. You send a message depending on what's going on. Hey, what's up with the baby? Hey, how's the car? Hey, how's the work meeting? Hey, how's travel? Hey, how's your book? Like the message you send depends on the person that you're talking to, and a lot of people are looking for some like cold outreach template instead of just looking into the person that they're trying to talk to and asking them questions about their actual life. And so for me, what that meant is like if I found a person in product that I found was really interesting, I'd go look through their LinkedIn posts or their Twitter posts or their YouTube or their podcast or whatever it is that would come up, and I'd genuinely ask them questions about that. And that's how I had a conversation with them as a person instead of as a transaction.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. Doing the research ahead of time, and like, there's nothing there that you're interested in, find the next person. Right. Yeah. Julia asks, were there any gaps in the curriculum that you noticed once you entered the job market?
I mean, it's hard because there's no curriculum for products management. So I'm going to answer this question from the perspective of software engineering. I think algorithms was the biggest one. I don't remember us like doing stuff on algorithms, but knowing that that was an important thing that would come up. So knowing that I had to do, because mind you, even though I was going into product management, I was still looking at software engineering opportunities simultaneously. And that was something that I felt like I had to do a lot of learning about on my own. So from that perspective, yes. In terms of product management, like I said, there's no curriculum for product management necessarily. And that just came from a lot of exposure to people who are in product and having conversations with them about what are you doing in your job? If you were looking for someone to hire, what would you be looking for in that role? Because each company has different specifications. For example, Tesla has very, 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 very high technical requirements of their product managers. Redfin had no technical requirements. So understanding what the company you're interested in is specifically looking for, and then adjusting based off what they're searching for in their candidates.
Fantastic. Well, I know we're right at time. If you had like one word of advice to give someone considering the boot camp, what would it be?
I would say don't do it when the world's about to shut down 2 weeks later. But
Have
besides,
a crystal ball.
and I would say understand why you're trying to do it. A lot of people ask me about going to a boot camp because they think it's going to magically fix whatever struggle they're having in their job search, as opposed to understanding if the skills that they specifically need for the role that they want are going to be the skills that are going to be taught in whatever program they sign up for. And if you aren't sure what you're looking for specifically, you're not going to be able to grade whether a program will be right for you. And then you just go through the program and graduate and hope that it fixes all of your problems, but nothing in life ever fixes all of your problems. So I'd say the biggest advice is be self-aware about why you want to do it and what you're looking for as a measure for whether it's the type of program that you need to be in or not.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, Phyllis, this has been packed. Really appreciate sharing your story and where you are today. And is there anything you want folks to know where they can find you or get your book?
Yeah, so definitely reach out to me on LinkedIn. The book is called From Fraud to Freedom. You can find that on Amazon. Also, it's about imposter syndrome. And I also, if you just like generally look up From Fraud to Freedom, you'll see like other conversations that I've had about imposter syndrome with people in tech, if you're interested in videos on that. And then I also have like mock interview videos on YouTube, not of my own. I featured on other people's channels that you can look up as well by just looking up my name and then looking up like product interview. So that will help too. Oh, or you can click the link that Lindsay just dropped. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. Thanks so much, Phyllis. We were cheering you on. And again, thank you so much for being with us today. Wishing you the best, and I look forward to following your journey on LinkedIn and over the internet. Thanks everyone for joining. We'll share this recording out afterwards, and hope you all have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye.